America's failure to defend Judeo-Christian values is leading to the emergence of a dark anti-Israel alliance in the Middle East. Years ago, Pastor Andrew Brunson had a prophetic dream about this alliance when he was imprisoned in Turkey. And recently he spoke with CBN's Gary Lane about what it takes to endure spiritual darkness and hardship.
More than 6 years have passed since Pastor Andrew Brunson's unexpected release from a Turkish prison. And now the world focuses on a different hostage crisis. I recently asked Brunson to share his thoughts given his unique perspective.
These hostages are being held unjustly, maybe not in a prison, but in a tunnel, many of them in Gaza, underground. What emotions do you feel? What are your thoughts when you see these hostage families and you see the hostage release?
When I see the reunions, it really moves me because I remember just the desperation, the desperate longing I had for freedom and to be with my family. And so then I see these people coming together after not knowing if they'll ever see each other again. And I know what they're feeling.
Brunson spent 23 years as a missionary in Turkey, sharing the gospel and planting churches. In 2016, Turkish authorities arrested him on terrorism charges for allegedly assisting the Kurdish minority and sentenced him to life in prison. Today, Brunson remains grateful to President Trump for what he describes as unprecedented efforts to negotiate his release. Upon his return to the United States, Trump invited Brunson and his wife Noreen to the Oval Office.
I remember when we prayed for him, I in the Oval Office said, "Can I pray for you?" He said, "Well, I probably need prayer than anyone else in this, more prayer than anyone else in this room." And I think it is true.
Like many Americans, Brunson believes God intervened to spare Trump's life last year in Butler, Pennsylvania. Although the Trump administration has made strides toward family and faith-friendly policies, Brunson believes the country's anti-Christian bias has a strong foothold and is deeply ingrained.
It will bring a delay, but I think the culture as a whole has already become post-Christian. And when we came back from Turkey, I came back to a different country. And I think in the last years especially, there was an acceleration toward a very aggressively anti-Christian position, especially by the ruling elite, you could say. Every institution in our country is led by people who are post-Christian and increasingly anti-Christian.
So those extreme pressures will rise up again after Trump.
I think they will because the culture hasn't changed. Our culture is actually very quickly turning away from God.
Brunson predicts the United States and other Western nations will eventually become less inclined to defend religious freedom. As a result, regional powers will rise to fill the void.
I think that Turkey, Russia, and Iran will move together in some alliance. I had a dream about this in prison that was from God. I have very few dreams from God, but this was one. And I saw them moving in a dark alliance. This was in 2016, before they started to move together. And then it started to happen. And so I think there are spiritual ties there. But I think there is an alliance that will continue in a darker direction and that will it will eventually, in the end, try to undermine Israel, yes.
Brunson always felt strong as a missionary. Then, when isolated in prison, despair overtook him, and he felt abandoned by God. Speaking at a recent Regent University chapel, he explains that his wounded heart led him into a spiritual crisis.
I began to question God's existence. And the first time I did that, I began to cry. I said, how could this happen? I've started churches, I've baptized Muslims, and here I've taught and preached for years, and now I'm even questioning whether God exists. I had many questions for God, and I became aware at some point that God had questions for me. Andrew, are you going to love me when you don't see my love? Are you going to be faithful to me when you don't see my faithfulness?
Brunson predicts American Christians will also face difficult times ahead. He encouraged students to stay strong in the face of adversity, even when God's presence is not felt.
You have to survive those times of crisis. You have to remain faithful. Your devotion to God is being tested, and you have to hold on to Him, even when you don't understand, even when you don't have answers. Will you love Him when you don't see His love? Will you be faithful when you don't see his faithfulness.
Brunson believes that people can endure when they learn to recite what God says about himself.
I had to make a conscious decision to repeat again and again, no, God, you are faithful. You do love me, even if I don't feel it, even if I don't see it. You are good. You are true. And to say these things, even when my emotions are in turmoil and in darkness, but with my will, I can choose to speak what is true.
Guidance from Brunson's experience, trusting God while facing life's challenges. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Thank you, Gary. As you and I watch that interview with Andrew Brunson, we're not captive in a Turkish prison, nor were we ever. But we do have seasons like Pastor Andrew did of saying, God, where are you? I don't see you. But Andrew talked about how God asked him questions which showed God was speaking. Sometimes we can hear God speak but not see him move. And Pastor Brunson made the decision, I'm not going to base my view of God on my circumstances or my emotions. I'm going to base it on his love and faithfulness, even when I don't see him. It brings meaning to that old saying, believe in the dark what God told you in the light. I hope that's an encouragement for many today.
Are miracles real?
Let's investigate.
A lot of skeptics will say, well, miracles are impossible. Why? Because they violate the laws of nature. You can't violate the laws of nature.
I looked at my hand that was clutched. I said, hand move.
We got to 2125.
Hallelujah! He's dead. It's over. I said, shock him one more time.